Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Colonel Frank Colley. We warmly welcome the family of Trooper David Richard Kersey Nurthen, whose story will be told shortly. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Trooper David Richard Kersey Nurthen. David Nurthen was born on the 2nd of August 1912 in the eastern Sydney suburb of Waverley, the son of George and Frances Nurthen. He grew up in the area with his siblings, Milton, Percy and Alice, and attended the local school. When the Second World War began, he was working as a plumber and had spent 4 months in the Australian Military Forces with the 7th Light Horse Brigade. He enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 22nd of May 1940, joining the 7th Division Cavalry Regiment. While training at Cowra, he was found absent without leave and, as punishment, was confined to barracks for a week. But this misdemeanour did not prevent him from taking pre-embarkation leave the following month, during which he was able to spend time with friends and family. On the 26th of December, Nurthen left Australia bound for overseas service. Landing in the Middle East in early 1941, his unit conducted further training and was used mainly in a defensive role. Equipped with Vickers light tanks and Bren carriers, it was garrisoned at the Suez Canal before transferring to Cyprus after the fall of Greece. In August 1941, the regiment was moved to Syria, where it formed part of the Allied occupation force. In March 1942, the regiment returned to Australia following Japan's entry to the war. A few months later, on the 13th of May, David Nurthen married his sweetheart, Rachel, who he referred to affectionately as Ray. When the couple's honeymoon ran late, Nurthen was found absent without leave, receiving 2 weeks' detention as punishment. In September 1942, Nurthen again embarked for overseas service, this time travelling to New Guinea to defend Port Moresby against the Japanese advance along the Kokoda track. As the campaign began to turn in favour of the Australians in December, the 2nd 7th was flown over the Owen Stanley Range to Popondetta in order to take part in the fighting along the Sanananda track as infantry. Japanese troops had dug in along the north coast, determined to hold the beachheads at all costs, and Sanananda was the centre of their defensive position. The Japanese commander concentrated most of his force in this area and took personal command. Defences were placed along the track, with positions protected by deep, camouflage bunkers made of logs that were placed in depth. Allied air power deterred the Japanese from reinforcing and resupplying the beachheads. And towards the end of the battle, some defenders were withdrawn by sea or escaped overland. But the remaining garrison would fight to the death, almost to the man. The 2nd 7th made a wide flanking movement to reach the Huggins roadblock. It was a nightmare of a journey, involving crossing areas of waist-deep swamp along a track known as the Track of Dead Men's Bones. At each bend, soldiers found green and rotting corpses. After reaching the roadblock, 6 days of tough fighting followed as the men advanced some 350 metres and secured a forward post. The advance, which cost the 2nd 7th 30 dead and 40 wounded, ground to a halt just before Christmas, leaving the troops to deal with the situation so aptly described in the official history. The primeval swamps, the dank and silent bush, the heavy loss of life, the fixity of purpose of the Japanese, for most of whom death could be the only ending, all combined to make this struggle so appalling that most of the hardened soldiers who were to emerge from it remember it unwillingly as their most exacting experience of the whole war. With no more Australian forces available, unless the defences elsewhere in New Guinea were stripped, Nurthen and his mates would not receive assistance until the new year. Sanananda itself would not be taken until late January. Nurthen would not live to see the village taken, having been killed in action on the 30th of December 1942. A soldier who saw Nurthen fall reported that he was killed instantly by machine gun fire on the Sanananda track. He was a very courageous and popular chap. David Nurthen was 30 years old. Captain F.J. Hartley later wrote to David's widow and told her that he was not able to get into the area until the 17th of January, at which point he gave David and his friends a proper burial where they had fallen. A rough wooden cross marks the spot in the jungle. Following the loss of her husband, Rachel Nurthen joined the Australian Army Medical Women's Service. Today, David Nurthen's remains lie in Port Moresby, Bamana Cemetery, under the inscription, "Treasured memories of courage and love by his loving wife, Ray." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. Today, we remember Trooper David Richard Kersey Nurthen, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.